Another episode of Truth Has No Sides. Today's guest is Robin Peng. I have known him for over a decade now. We met at a local event, started talking and enjoyed each other's conversation and have stayed in touch ever since. He is one of the most intelligent and creative human beings that I've ever come across with. Um, my personal uh, my personal reasoning for bringing Robin on is because of how he's approached spirituality, how he's approached meditation, but coming from a very structured, engineering, intelligent type of mind. So I wanted to see how someone struggles or actually um, doesn't struggle with his level of intelligence and creativity when it comes to spirituality and trying to figure out his place in the world, trying to figure out what the universe is all about. So, Robin, could you give everyone a little bit of a bio of yourself?
Sure. Um, I struggle. I'm a struggler. Um, I, um, I'm very fortunate to have a cross-cultural influence of my identity. Um, I came to the stateside with my parent. Uh, we immigrated here to the U.S. back in the late '70s. So my identity had to shift from the traditional uh, Asian cultural narrative to a Western independent uh, storyline. So the benefit of being here, who am I, is that I'm a influence of different cultural experiences. I'm a industrial designer by trade. Just to clarify, an industrial designer is someone who it's the discipline where we bridges artistic expression and heavy engineering. We're the bridge between the two. For example, if you whichever car that you drive, you look at the overall aesthetic, not only the exterior of the car to the layout of the engine bay. There's industrial design application to that. So my career, who am I? I've been a industrial designer, practicing industrial designer with my firm for almost 25 years.
And your firm was created after you spent some time at Ford, right, with the F-150 and some of the other cars.
Yeah, I was a automotive designer. Fresh out of college, I was hired in by a Ford Motor Car Company out of Dearborn, Michigan. And you know, to me, the Ford, Ford Motor Car Company was like a candy store for a little kid who just wants to design cars. But developing a car is just on the surface level, because fundamentally, for someone who's able to craft a kinetic sculpture like Ford GT or F-150 or Lincoln Town Car, there's a there's a cultural expression tied to that. I don't want to get too technical into the automotive design narrative, but if you look at the styling of a of a Mustang, I mean, it goes back decades. No one's going to refute that a '69 Mustang Fastback is not a gorgeous looking car, right? It has so much of the cultural expression, which I think for immigrant like me, um, I I gravitated toward that, because to me that was the epitome of Americana. So the development of any type of creative endeavor, there's a certain level of um, freedom of expression, and American cars for the longest time, I'm referring to cars back in the 50s and 60s, were extremely expressive. Of course, we had a downturn. I joined Ford Motor Car Company back in the 90s, and entire Dearborn, Michigan Heartland America was at the time in a cardiac arrest, and but still, the day when I cross over the Iron Gate over at Ford, they have the old Iron Gate that dates back to like the 20s and the 30s where they had the riots. Um, I felt that right as a little kid that you know I'm here at the Heartland America designing raw American iron.
Isn't that interesting how our purpose, how we see things, what we want shifts over time?
Yeah. For any of your viewers that's in the creative field, I could share my 2 cents. Uh, any type of creative
Which
endeavor.
usually turns out to about a quarter with you. So go for it.
Well, any type of design activity, it's a collective experience. Working at Ford Motor Car Company, you have electrical, body engineering, right? You have manufacturing, design. So there's many different enclaves. You have to work with teams. So any type of design work, doesn't matter if it's product design, graphic design, UX UI design, engineering design, aerodynamics. It's all collective, and it's an outward expression. Whereas when you do inventive work, and I'm going to touch base and to clarify to people that there's a difference between designing versus inventing. Okay, and you've been to my office many times. That you see a lot of work that I've developed. These are all design output because I have to work with business owners, CEOs, right, stakeholders from military operations, and it's a collective activity. And but as an inventor, right, it is more of a individual pursuit. It's you are doing solo work, and you are trying to find meaning through your own expression. And oftentimes, uh, you have to bounce back between the two, and it's very challenging. Very challenging for someone to get not knowing themselves to get pulled into this this business apparatus because design is just part of the the elements to building a successful product or solution. Then you could sell it. It's a financial apparatus in the outcome is just making a product so you can produce healthy revenue and satisfy shareholders, right? Improve shareholders value. Whereas an inventor, you're full on solo. There's nobody to report to but you and the divine.
When did when did the divine matter to you? When did you start meditating? When did I hate using the phrase, but when did spirituality kick in for you? Was it back in China when you came over, and then you had to adapt to the Western side of spirituality? No. Okay. What was it?
Uh, I think spirituality is such a all-encompassing phrase, but the pursuit of any type of uh, elements where there's higher level of consciousness, um, I think it somehow ties to our own personal struggle, tribulations, or trauma. I think because of whatever the reality is starting to not make sense to you, and you have to find ways to be whole and find peace. I think that's when you start going inward, trying to figure out what this is, what this world is about. That's when it started. I think that's when it started for me. Um, I think it really kicked in, um, when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and the whole family drama in our family. I think that caused a lot of turmoil, tremendous amount of pain within our family. And that's when I started going inward because you can't find relief in in an outward landscape.
Well, and to have a little a context of why that was for you is because most of your family are doctors, and they had a very specific way of what they wanted to do to help your mom, and it ended up in the long run hurting her, and that was a very difficult thing for you, right? Is that the context of the shift?
Oh yeah. uh, you realize that your mind is like a mental projector, and you start playing out a storyline. My siblings, you're right. My entire family, all MD, PhDs, and surgeons. I'm the only one that's not uh, that did not follow that path. So, you know, of course, your mind start playing out these different uh, storyline. These guys are science is pretty much like a religious sect, right? You have to obey. And my siblings, I to put things in perspective so I don't go down the rabbit hole. It's like they're trained to serve the empire, and they obey the Lord. It's kind of like I'm going to use the Star Wars narrative. Like those stormtroopers. Their goal is to bow down to the Lord and serve the empire, and they're all expendable. And through the tribulation, I develop a narrative that MDs are like stormtroopers. So my storyline, I realized, wait a minute, this is my thought process. Is this really the way I want to play out the scenario? Because it was very painful to play out that scenario in your mind. It's not in the heart anymore. It's all in the mind. And that's when I think knowing there's pain, because pain comes from here. And that's when when I started to look and explore beyond the limiting domain of what's between our ears.
And what did you do? How did you help yourself with that? How did you help yourself with meditation, different books, different questions? What?
How did I help myself? I didn't know how at the beginning.
I think that's pretty common for most people.
Yeah. And there was anger, seeing my mom being disfigured by the surgery, and her persona altered. It was painful to see the hurt that my mom had to endure through the Western drug, pharma, medical apparatus, what they did to her. And there's a lot of rage and anger. And I realized underneath all of that is fear. So the 7 years, 7 years. Yeah, my mom passed away in 2000. And I saw her suffer for 7 years. And you said a couple of very supportive things to help me through it. Because
it wasn't 2000. What year was it?
2020. 2020,
2020.
she passed away. Yeah.
Okay.
October 2020. But 2017, 2018, to see my mom's drastic decline. I know how to judge. I know how to lay blame. And boy, and the pain is that any judgment that you throw outward, any arrows and weaponry you throw outbound, it comes back right at you.
Yes, it does. And what did you do to shift that? Because there was quite a bit of anger that came out of you when you would discuss that, or it came up. It was a topic that you brought up often.
Remember, you said to me when I was kind of going through this whole ordeal, you said you should thank. You told me that you said to me, Robin, you should thank your siblings profusely for burning off all the negative karma. You remember that? that kind of opened up a window for me. I was able to breathe, say thank you for letting out that dark shadow that I carry. Um, um,
Yeah,
what's that
because
movie? Go ahead.
most people will take lifetimes to release a lot of that stuff. And the what's happening on this planet with this great awakening, as they call it, this great shift, is what used to take lifetimes, multiple lifetimes, for people to go through, is now happening within years. It's very, very intense. But there's always a catalyst to it. And that's why so many people who come out the other end of their darkness, their hate, whatever it is, they always like to thank the people who created that darkness and that hate and that anger to come up, because there was something that was needed to bring it up. Now, I know that sounds, it's kind of relief, like a relief for people, that at some point it'll be gone and they'll be able to thank that person. But from your personal experience and my personal experience going through it, uh, I don't want to thank anybody. I'd tell them to go fuck themselves. And I don't want to listen to people saying what I just said when they say you're going to thank them. And well, I can think of a different way to have gone through and bring up the darkness I had inside me. And I don't know what my soul signed up for, but I would really like to talk to it at some point and say, could we have gone a little bit easier in this life? But yeah, that's kind of what we used to always discuss. You were talking about a movie.
Yeah, your comment there sort of sparked a thought in me. So when you thank someone, it implies they helped you with something that you felt a sense of gratitude. See, that to me is transactional. Like you give me $1, I'll give you a lollipop or something, right? And I don't personally, I don't see it as such, but I do see um, a polarization, a contrast of our experiences. Uh, Love versus fear, right? Light versus dark, right? Uh, God, Satan, right? U.S., China, right? Apple, IBM, Dow. It's just everything is a polarization, and dystopian versus utopian. Everything is set up to be a yin yang graphic almost. And in my field of work, is very much like that. There's always a contrast and a balance. And if you could truly figure that out for yourself, because there's not one right answer. That's why I think everyone, you go online and start hearing all these people talking about spirituality, near-death experience, right? The Anunnakis are coming, right? Secret order of the Jesuit, right? Just all these things are it's just a narrative. But if you could come back to the center, which is your own being, if you can accept that as being the center of your universe, then you will be more at peace. I have friends that are very much, just knee deep in this whole political drama that's undertaking right now. It's very hard for a lot of people because both sides are hurting. And the media is just turning that machine, just generating even more pain and trauma. There's so much expectations linked to these narratives. So I always think that now that I look at my understanding of of design, um, allowed me to kind of interpret spatial intelligence. If I could use that abstract word, spatial intelligence, not only in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense. And I that's a topic for another day. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You're
that
gonna
is
you're gonna you're, you're gonna drop something like that and say, let's move on.
well, that could take up. We could spend a lot of time just on spatial intelligence from a technical
Just
standpoint.
okay.
Right. Yeah, and what I do, right? Everything is about manipulating form, right? Understanding light, right? Fluidics. There's so many different aspects to design elements. So being able to see and transcend and visualize, because spatial intelligence is tied to a different level of thought process. And unless I know whom I'm speaking with, it's going to be very hard to present that abstract concept.
Well, in regards to going online and seeing all these new things, these new teachings, these new practices, the Anunnaki are coming, conspiracies, this, and this. There's a great Bukowski quote that I always have in my phone, and it says the problem with the world is that the intelligent people are full of doubts, while the stupid ones are full of confidence. So when I see, and I know this great shift has got a lot of people thinking they're helping. They're trying to find their purpose, and usually that purpose ends up thinking that they need to help someone. They need to help humanity. A lot of new healers, a lot of new meditation teachers, breathwork practitioners, people talking about these three words are going to manifest anything you want. The incredible amount of ignorance and arrogance that is out there right now, of people feeling that confident in saying that if you do this, you will get this, is fucking insane. It's absolutely insane because we're looking for clarity. We all got a bottle of water. This is our minds, right? And you can see through that water. As you add dirt to it, as you add knowledge, conspiracies, ups and downs, right and wrongs, you add all the constructs of the world, you just add dirt, you spin it up, and you can't see through that water. We think spinning it up more is going to let the dirt settle. No, you got to let that thing settle so the dirt comes down to the bottom. You can see through the water again. There's never been more information spat at us. Never been more people talking like they know. Never been more billboards, more TVs, more advertisements. Unfortunately, this is the hard time I have even with this. No more podcasts. I mean, I'm feeding. That's kind of what we talked about before this podcast, and we'll go into it now. Is because I loved Ram Dass's quote: "Those who know don't talk, and those who talk don't know." And he would say that before a lot of the speeches and say, I understand my predicament. If you have confidence in anything in human existence, you're not seeing the full picture. And that's terrifying for most people. And the mind wants safety, it wants security, and it wants stability. That is an illusion. It's never going to happen. But if you have incredible amounts of confidence in anything, you scare me. Because I used to have a lot of confidence in a lot of things until you start to expand your mind, expand consciousness. You start to, just as simple as Republicans and Democrats. To have that much confidence that Democrats are right and Republicans are ruining the world, or that Republicans are right and Democrats have destroyed everything. I mean, that's the vast majority of the world, whether it's not Republican or Democrat, whatever different countries. I'm blown away daily that this political thing that happens every 4 years is still a big deal. I can't believe the amount of intelligent people that get locked up in this bullshit. And they're not even the ones running things. They're just a fucking puppet.
No, the
And
casual. Let me interject. Let me tell you. Let me share with you what I've come to terms with to find peace. Doesn't matter if it's about our political theater or the drug pharma conspiracy trying to poison mankind, using vaccines or whatever the narrative. Everything is the things we see on YouTube. It's an outward expression. It's almost like an outburst. Just so much stuff thrown at you, and what happens is that when you get so much information, just you're literally drowned by the information. And if you don't have the ability to strike a balance with your inward introspection, if you don't really go inward, it's you're gonna implode. That's why I had a very difficult time when I was in college to collaborate with other people. How can I work with somebody if I don't even know myself? How can I possibly be a contribution to a group, right, if I don't even have a clear identity, figured out for myself? So the balance between the outward creative work, right, and that creative expression needs to be balanced with your inward introspection. You need to have deep introspection, or well, of course, deep is a relative term. So it's a balance between the two. When we get on stage, the light comes on, right, show starts, but that has to be balanced with something else. And I think that's why in our field, work in the field of design, there's a lot of struggle. I remember I was in Amsterdam, visited the Van Gogh Museum. I read, the letter that Van Gogh wrote to his brother before he killed himself, and this is it might seem graphic, but I always remember this because this is a thought that I had. It's like, my gosh, Van Gogh cut his ear off, and there's a lot of pain, right? If you look at the expression, the inward introspection, I don't know his trauma that he endured, but my perception, I'm very fortunate. I still have some empathy left in me, but as an individual, when you look at that kind of pain that a person had to endure, he was very visible to want to heal himself because that pain was a form of balance to something else that no one knows, right? And a lot of designers and artists, right, we're all in that creative pursuit. You look at Mozart, right? You look at Paganini. You look at Tesla, the artist, Howard Hughes, right? Extremely creative, outbound individuals, and they all suffer a great deal. So I've been trying to just, I want to share with the audience to just say, there's a balance. If you want to be outward presenter, right? You want to be the Deepak Chopra. You want to be DeGrasse Tyson. You want to be whoever the personality or what is it? What is the Elon Musk production? You want to be the Trump production. These productions have an agenda, and the media that's producing it is definitely very intentional. There's definitely things that as a designer, you get to see, the ordinary world that we reside in. It's a 3D physical realm. To try to figure things out here, you can only go so far because science is trying to tell you that everything has a purpose. But there are things within science just can't explain because science doesn't go to the other side. Science, they're trying to explain something that's in the invisible amorphic realm. So that's where you started to see a lot of struggle and pain. Yeah, you and I have gone through that, right? So you could talk about the aesthetic experience in this domain in our world, but you can't really talk about the aesthetic experience on the other side. You might be able to in a limited scope, with all these NDEs that came back and saw something beautiful. That's beautiful, but that's just their story. Unless you get there, you won't know. So whatever the narrative that's been, thrown upon us, I think it's just to be mindful that it's just an external narrative, and they want to influence you, right? If you become rich, you got to buy more stuff. You got to go buy, $100 million yacht. You got to go buy stuff. It's the perpetuating a consumeristic cycle, which is part of what I've been involved in for a long time, is get people to buy the things I created. Consumerism. And
Yeah,
you ask,
that's
who's the person on top, right? Who's the guy governing all of this cycle of activities?
well, that's one of the most interesting things about these conversations is the way you talk about consumerism is something you don't enjoy. Yet, for the last 25 years, you've built products that are to be sold, right? It is, human beings are the greatest contradiction, I think, in the universe. And I think that's why so many souls want to come here. I think, I think a lot of, from the gist I get from near death experiences, from listening to these channels, listening to great teachers, um, I think a lot of souls get bored having everything and they want to come down here and just they want to know the ups and downs. They want to know the rights and the wrongs. They want to know something different. They want all of those experiences, and they can't have those experiences when everything is taken care of for them, right? Because all of those near-death experiences, like you said, until you experience it, you won't know. But when you hear the story millions and millions of times over and over again, there's a good chance that if you had a near-death experience, you'd probably experience the same thing. And what they experience is they feel at home. They feel great love. They feel great peace. They feel great bliss. They don't want to leave, right? So as in a human form, it seems like a lot of us, including myself, are trying to fill that. But that's what we had on the other side. And we decided to come here and fill the polar opposite. That's always struck me as interesting, that there is a line around the galaxy of an endless number of souls that are trying to come and take your spot and my spot. And you and I's discussions usually uh, are pretty heavy and dark, in a sense of what we're trying to figure out. And one of the questions I'd like to ask you, because you were talking about Van Gogh, because I've personally had suicidal thoughts. I assume you have as well.
Yeah, we all do. Pain management.
Yep. I was just listening to that famous doctor talks about childhood trauma. Gabor, mate.
Gabor Mate. Yeah.
Yeah, he
A lot.
even
Oh my
yeah.
gosh! You see the energy coming out of him. Oh, he's been through some deep dark. He's been
Yeah,
through some
that's
places.
he
Oh my.
he talks about that, and we're sitting here seeking truth, but how do you expect to get anywhere near truth when you're living in a 3D world that's divided and everyone's trying to sell something to someone? Great teacher once said that no one would leave their house if what was going on in their head was broadcast to the world. No one. The suicidal thoughts, the demented thoughts, the sick thoughts, the shit that goes through our head, um, on a 8 billion person scale. We wouldn't leave our house if the thoughts going through our head, everyone else could hear. And he's right. Even those enlightened teachers. My teacher's told me a few times that he's been meditating. He's had some of the most disgusting thoughts come through his head. And he's like, that's interesting. I need to go back to meditate.
Well, the question is, how did he know that that thought was his?
That's a
Right.
whole nother, yeah, that's a whole nother
Right.
discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. To your point, I just brought up this. I gave a talk on reality canvas. Remember a couple of years ago, I had to give a talk,
Hmm.
and that was after my my litigation. I was in a legal battle with Apple for 5 years. That was very interesting. But I want to follow up on what you said about the trauma that everyone's going through, and I think a lot it has to do with your ability to visualize. Being a designer, we're very good at visualization. So, from a contextual standpoint, deep down, we all interpret this reality in uh, our own through our own lens. Um, there's that. Imagine this continuum, right? This life continuum. I think when we're young, um, you see the world as a like a playground, it's really fun. I remember I grew up in a a normal household. There isn't that much. I mean, there's some drama there, but you see the world as a playground, right? But if you move down that connect, so if you look at the world from a playground standpoint, you're curious, right? You want to play. But then if you go through the rigorous schooling, which I went through a very structured, militant, force compliant, institution in Asia, where you get beat, you get physically hit, you get beat on if you don't comply. A lot of hard memorization, right? Just heavy conditioning. So if you see the world as a, as a like a school system, like a like a prison, right? There's different interpretation of that reality. And of course, you go to work, right? You work for corporate America. A lot of people put the suit on, which is their armor. Then you go to work. It's like going to war. It's like battlefield. So how you perceive this reality? If you see it as a battlefield, then everything is conflict centric, right? And then for those people that have given up because they don't want to participate, then they invariably go into a downward spiral. They think this is a prison planet. But of course, that we started exploring, and you remember that we all read the book by Viktor Frankl, The Man's Search for Meaning, right? He lived in a slaughterhouse every day, right? Somebody from his cell gets pulled out and executed. So if you have the mindset that you live in a slaughterhouse, on one continuum, on one side of the spectrum, then you go to the other side, you think this is a beautiful garden. It's a totally different mindset depending on where you want to pull that narrative from of your reality. And again, that's all in the mind. And to be able to come out of that continuum is not easy. Because fortunately, when we pass on, we're not going to have those thoughts anymore. The thoughts were end. And because we all have, it's like you said, we had at one point in time had suicidal tendency, and I had a colleague call me at 4 a.m. and he had a gun pointed to his head, and I'm just for the sake of the conversation, I'll call him Tom. I say, Tom, why did you have your gun pointed at your head? Because you want to turn the mind off. You don't point it anywhere else. So the mind has the ability to create all these different storylines. And if it goes out of control, you actually believe that's real. And you invariably turn it off, either through suicide or drugs or whatnot. But I just find it very interesting is that most people, when they point a gun, they don't point at any other parts of their body. They point it to their head.
Well,
Is to shut the mind down, actually shut the brain down, to turn off the noisy, the monkey brain.
I think one of the most interesting things that no one pays attention to is we go with the more extreme addictions. We go with drinking or drugs, sex, suicide, whatever, to cope with that pain, right? I think one of the most addicting is just life in general. The distractions, the TV, the social media, the stuff that we don't find harmful or is marketed as non-harmful, right? Alcohol. Every fucking alcoholic commercial, and there are just as many as pharmaceutical commercials, are of a good time, of being a warrior, of being a good person, of having a party, of having a celebration. And alcohol is absolutely the worst thing for the body, fucking your body dry of water. It's dehydrating you, but it is marketed as a good time, so it's okay. It's fine.
Well, the question is, you have to ask, why would they do that to us? Why?
Well,
That,
that's a whole nother
that's another discussion, right? That's tied to spatial intelligence. That's another discussion. But you have to look at all these apparatus that's designed to harm us. Why do they want
well.
to do that?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like these really subtle distractions um, keep us, and for good reason for a lot of people, because they don't want to experience what we're talking about. They don't want to experience that. I don't. Um, and it's like saying I don't want to be 44, right? There's going to come a time where I'm 45. There is just a natural evolution of the soul that's going to bring up everything that people don't want to deal with. So when we one of the grand narratives in today's world is just change your thoughts or change your narrative, change your story, change your whatever. Uh, it's like, truly, it's like being 44 and saying, be 25 again. You can't. There are different people at different stages of their evolution in this specific time on this planet. There are happy people and there are sad people. There are people who are suicidal, and there's people who would say, I can't believe you'd ever think about that because everything's so great. Right. And this constant marketing of the subconscious, and I understand what Dr. Bruce Lipton and all those guys are doing. Joe Dispenza talking about shifting your thoughts and being it. They're not wrong. But again, you are not understanding levels of consciousness on this planet. You're not understanding the evolution of the soul. There are things that some people will not be able to do in this incarnation. There are certain things that some people will be able to do, and they're going to make it look effortless. And for those people, they are going to become who we look to. You know, the masses, if they're in pain and suffering, they're going to look to people who are happy and say, how do you get that happiness? And that person's going to write a book about 10 steps of how to find happiness. And there's going to be a lot of people in pain and suffering who are going to follow those 10 steps, and they're not going to get that happiness. I think the unrealistic expectations, the continuous do this meditation, this will work. Listen to this frequency, do the Monroe Institute, do this psychedelic, go do ayahuasca, say these 3 words, use this mantra, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're looking for clarity, not more noise, and it's creating more noise. And everyone thinks that everything that's going on this planet, the more teachers, the more modalities, the more practices, the more techniques, is actually helping us evolve. It's not. What's helping us evolve is the natural evolution of the planet, like the natural evolution of someone who's 43 turning 44. They didn't need a teacher to turn 44. When left to our own devices, we fuck it up. And I did. I did for many years. I did every modality humanly possible, every practice, every meditation, every teacher, everything. It led me nowhere, but confused, a lot more noise in my head until I stopped. We got to stop with all this extra noise. We have to.
You know, to kind of sum up what you just shared with me, um, ultimately, all that energy coming out of you is a form of judgment, making judgment on why people should be at certain places, making judgment on how the world is unfair, um, judgment on the quality of the air, judging on the horrible treatment of prisoners, right? There's a lot of judgment all around. There's judgment in every facet of our society, and that judgment is tied to an energy expression, right? Because how do you know that someone would plant the seed to trigger your judgment? Because your judgment oftentimes it carries always has an energy expression. That energy is tied to a frequency, and that frequency, if it's tuned correctly, could create a lot of stress in your body. You know, they can use sound. It's proven they can use sound to if it's amplified to a certain resonant frequency, it could, you know, in a hospital setting, they could knock out the kidney stones of these ultrasonic guns, right? And takes out the kidney stones without doing invasive surgery, right? But yes, there's acoustic resonance, right? Those what do you call those sound healing practitioners? They pluck I think ancient Egypt, they used these particular sound waves to pluck the strings to heal your body through harmonious alignment of your cellular structure. And all these big, massive bells that's been melted down over hundreds of years. That sound has acoustic resonance to heal, and sound healing is not a conspiracy. There's truth to that, right? Including the ballast, right, in my ceiling. Well, I don't have ballast in my. I got rid of a lot of the ballast in my overhead ceiling, but sound coming from the computer. So the frequency is tied to energy. To me, that is tied to an energy expression and is tied to a thought. And any judgment, as soon as I bring out a judgment, you put it on TV, there's judgment. But at the same time, we have to account for, the various different types of warfare that's been invented. So if you kind of look at what is the purpose of warfare, Art of War, my Sun Tzu, Art of War. As a kid, go in college, I have like 7, 8 different transcriptions of that. I have the traditional text in Chinese, Mandarin, to the English translation. So you look at warfare. If you can accept that we're under attack in war, maybe I should clarify with your listeners that there's conventional warfare, right? Fighter jets, ICBMs, nuclear vessels, right? Conventional warfare. But then, as you know, that we can apply economic strategy, economic warfare, that we can force other countries to comply. So we can use, and economic warfare is not just on a nation to nation level. It could also be, business to customers. Imagine everyone who's carrying a mortgage right now. What if they just hypothetically push your interest rate, like double your interest rate? That would hurt a lot of people, right? That's weaponized, right? Economic warfare. Now, there's different forms of warfare, right? There's economic warfare, there's cyber warfare, spiritual warfare, and of course the mental warfare. There's so many different aspects. If you search hybrid warfare, I don't want to, clog up this discussion on warfare, but warfare is very unique because they can use social engineering as a form of warfare to alter our experience. It's very advanced. And so if you are not careful in applying, to have filters to make sure all the stuff that's coming at us, through all media channels, right? It's you can't fend for yourself. You have to protect yourself first before you start going outbound, thinking that you're following this camp. There's this pursue this spiritual guru here or this health coach over here. Then you're not centered within yourself. If you don't know how you are anchored, then the true purpose of your soul, if you can't accept that, then you are just tied into the riff of whatever the storyline that they prescribe for you to take. And that's actually why I think, to me, that's why there's a lot of pain in the world, myself included. I was on that wagon train, and to come off of that train takes a long time, and it takes a lot of supportive friends. You've been my friend for over a decade, right? So there are times, little, just a single word or just a little thought triggers, alignment. It's like, oh, okay, I got that that equation makes sense for me. That's part of me. Yeah, Charlie Johnson is part of my circle. Okay, cool, right? Safe. So once you have that foundation laid out, then you could actually get ready for the outside world. But none of us were ever prepared. We just kind of blindly follow because we weren't ready. We just are just not ready.
Yeah, and that's the tough part, finding that happy medium, because there are there are some amazing people with amazing abilities in regards to like sound healing. These other teachers, no different than teachers that we grew up with. There's elementary teachers, there's junior high teachers, there's high school teachers, and then there's teachers in college who teach a PhD level class. There's intelligence and levels of clarity that impact all 8 billion people. So there's a lot of great people. The people, again, they have their hearts in the right place, but there's a lot of people who are doing sound healing, frequency healing, psychics, energetic healing, and they're in elementary. They do not have the capacity to heal at a level they think they do. That's why so many people are going to attempt these new things and being let down and thinking it's bullshit. There are an incredible amount of people who are full of shit when it comes to being psychic. But don't let the vast majority of psychics who are full of shit negate the few that actually can help you. That is a big thing here, because there's the Akashic records, all the stuff we talk about on this podcast is as real as it gets, and there are very powerful people who can help you with a lot of things, but the vast majority are still in elementary. And just like my question to you 30 minutes ago, when you started on your path, you didn't know what to do. And that's the vast majority of the planet. This shift is bringing, as a rising tide brings up all ships, more people are starting to be okay with jumping outside of the religion, asking questions, asking about energy healings, asking about the Akashic records, asking about wanting to know certain things. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to use. So they just go to the first person, or they don't know how to disseminate if that person understands what they're doing, or if they have the power to actually heal. Because there are people out there that can do amazing things, miraculous things. So I've never pushed. I don't push against it because I used it all, and it all works. It's all real. But you've got to be really good at disseminating between the 99% who can't help and the 1% who can. You got to find those right people, those right teachers.
Yeah, I have a different perspective on that, because ultimately everything whatever the endeavor and effort that we're putting towards finding happiness or truth, or whatever the solution we're looking for, your personal truth is uniquely your own. And I'm going to throw out a hypothetical scenario. Okay, imagine you are laying on your deathbed and you only have a few seconds left to live. That you're going to switch over, you're going to die, the body's going to shut down, and you're going to not have any more of this physical experience. What would you be thinking about at that moment? Because I'm pretty certain I've been through that scenario several times. And I think that one thing that will jettison, probably not only before a few seconds, is your ego. Your ego will be gone. Because ego will not attach to a corpse. Can't attach to a dead body. Only a live one. So whatever that's on your mind, this is my own opinion, that few seconds before you die, I think that's probably the most beautiful thing that we could ever experience. I think that at that moment, if I have many thoughts, it's my thoughts again, those few seconds before I die is likely my truest form, my truest self. And if I was to stay in that realm, that few seconds, that magic moment, and be able to live my entire life from that core energy, that whole core experience, I think it would be very beautiful. And none of the things we talk about, the stuff that I created, none of the things will matter. You will only center around certain things. Actually, just one thing, really. I can tell you what that one thing is that I'm pretty certain. The only thing that matters in that few seconds before you die is love. And just coincidentally, I'll tell you what's interesting. On my way here to the office today, I was listening to my collection, and the song that was playing in my car was "What Is Love" by Howard Jones. It's just like, oh, it's so fitting. Love. It's so hard and simple. It's a paradox. Love. Really, what it boils down to is the ability to, if you can love yourself, none of these things matter. No judgment. There's no judgment when you hug your mom and dad or your grandma. There's no judgment because a lot of pain comes from judgment. And in my field of work, I know what judgment is. Okay, I know how to judge things. Right, when I'm in the design, when I'm in the lab next door, oh, I'm extremely hypercritical on what I do. Judgment, because you want to achieve certain level of perfection. And I think it's no different in a metaphoric sense when we're trying to apply judgment is because you're unhappy or unsatisfied with the current condition and you want to make it better. But the only way I think you could do that is you go inward. Going outward is just, there's no end. It's hard. It's tough. It's painful. Because I look at, you know, my journey these last 10 years. Oh yeah, pain subsides when I go inward. And you flick on YouTube, right? All these spiritual gurus talking about things. Like, you can't use words. I'm very certain, for me, that you can't use words to describe the ultimate truth. It's worthless. And I want to just frame this example for your listener. I have a 9-year-old son, and I was trying to explain to him the dimensional gap between an ant and a human being. I asked him, I said, do you think this ant on the table here can understand, your Lego project if you explain it to it? No. Right. So do you think that the ant could have a conversation with us or some kind of a relationship? No. That's a pretty big gap, right? As a matter of fact, if you were to just, the ant is on the palm of your hand and you just go like this, it could sense that energy, but doesn't know what you are because it operates within a different program. I mean, you can end the program and it had no idea. I don't even know if it understands pain. It may have pain sensors. Don't know. But I want to use that as an example to share with your audience. I think, to me, that gap between ant and us humans, it's too big. You can't possibly make that connection. And of course, in between an ant, this is a very drastic comparison, because between an ant and humans, why we have octopus, turtles, we have chimpanzees, right? So there's a whole spectrum of consciousness that's tied to that, but it's all tied to a form of intelligence, right? So where you are, right? Everyone's on a spectrum, and you can't expect someone to jump and shift to the next level. It's not going to happen. An octopus will always be an octopus, right? A chimpanzee will always be a chimpanzee. So for humans, it's the same, right? Someone's trying to bring this into a sort of a hodgepodge collective. It's very hard. If you are male, you are female, and whatever the energy expression that's attached to that. As a matter of take, for example, right now the media is really sensationalizing transgender and these. But turn the volume off when you watch these things and just visualize and sense the energy expression from these people. Not good. They're hurt. They're hurt. They're not bad. They're just hurt. Because the energy coming out of someone is very hurtful. So you look at some of these, real gurus, right? Dalai Lama or Gandhi. The energy is very calm. It's peaceful. The vibration is peaceful. So I think, if anything, in school, I got to, I was trying to explain to my son the difference between intellect versus wisdom. Not the same. As a matter of fact, I coined a narrative with my friend. I said, to be truly an evil person, to be a evil, destructive individual to the society, the prerequisite, one of the key prerequisites is you have to be highly intelligent to do harm to the society. You have to be very, very smart and intelligent. Of course, I have to challenge my own assumption. I say, what if someone was truly and extremely high wisdom? What kind of harm could they do to the society? Name
Well,
any guru, right? But who are the real guru that could do harm to society on a large scale, like Mao Zedong or Hitler or Mussolini?
yeah,
No,
that I think that when it comes to level of intelligence and the ability to do harm, their level of intelligence will depend on how the harm occurs. So there's a lot of very unintelligent people who fight a lot, who are very divisive, and they're going to hurt people just because of the fear of them having stuff taken away. The really intelligent people have the ability not to just harm one person in front of them, but they have the ability to harm millions, tens of an entire planet, because their intelligence allows them to be seen as good. Their intelligence allows them to shift the narrative, be really good at marketing, like pharmaceutical ads that always have a beautiful family feeling much better about themselves by the lake and a barbecue because they took that pill that solves one thing but creates two other things. That's always an interesting conversation. Um, but yeah, that level of intelligence, how they harm people, is directly
you have
correlated
to
to
be
their
really
intelligence.
smart. You have to
You
be
got to be,
highly intelligent to harm people on a large scale.
yeah. So when
Someone
it,
who's a pickpocketer, right, does not require much intelligence,
no, so
right? But
that's
to
that's that's
kill out
why,
millions and millions of people, right?
yeah, that's
Sorry.
why that's why I'm blown away by people who are still caught up in the politics because those politicians are not that smart. They're
Casualty.
not,
Well, they're
they're
casualty. It's not
the
they're
people.
casualty.
No, the
They're
people who run those politicians, the people who run those politicians have the real power, and they have the real intelligence. And yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But
Hmm.
um, as I listen to you talk for the past 10 minutes, there's so many questions that come up, and one thing I've been told by many people, my teacher, the Akashic records, other beings, all that stuff, is my heart's closed. It's not fully closed, but it's kind of blocked off. And that's one of the things. So when you talk about love, that's one of the things that I've actually been trying to open myself up to, because it's very hard to open myself up to love when I thought I was pretty open. Right? I see a puppy dog on a commercial and I cry. I see a homeless person and I cry. I cry a lot. There's a lot of emotion that comes out of me. So I always thought my heart was open, but um, it makes sense what they're saying. I think there's still a block on my heart that I've got to let loose, because when we're talking about love on the human experience, I think that's a very small amount of love. The love that these individuals are talking about is that universal love that is not from the heart. It's just they talk about it in near death experiences. That type of love that you just can't describe. A million times stronger than anything we could experience as a human. Um, yeah, love and
Yeah, I think.
peace.
Yeah, I think
Something I still need to work on.
part of the magic of being human is to really grasp the magnitude of life and death and love. Because speaking as a somebody who works in the creative design field, I mean, just if we all have the depth of comprehension of what marvelous engineering this body really is, And the force field, you want to call it a soul. If you have a religious order, a soul or a force field, right, or spirit, depending on whatever the lens you want to look at. That level of engineering that's needed to power our thoughts and the expression is freaking profound. And it took me a long time to come to this milestone. And I think everyone's time will come. If it's not this lifetime, hopefully the next, right? But just the awe of being alive, to see as you turn your eyes, your eyeball will center the optic nerve, sending signals through your pineal gland down to your visual cortex, right? These micro milliwatts of energy moving your nerves. I mean, that is just phenomenal. And then, of course, you want to layer on something that's even more profound on the elements and the attributes of love. You can't even see that stuff, right? I mean, does love exist, right? There's a lot of people who want to prove it. Oh, you want to prove this? There's a lot of things you can't prove. Prove to me that love don't exist, or prove to me that love exists. Doesn't matter. You can see that that's all in the mind, because the love energy, I think, pushes into a non-ordinary world. It's a very unique place, and that world in itself, right? Speaking from the vantage point of an ant, which is that example I pointed out earlier, is you can't use words to push into that boundary. I mean, that a whole story on Tower of Babel. That is a signature of how words could take apart humanity, separate humanity for different languages. I mean, the unified language at one point in time, I believe, has to do with love. Because I know that most of us would, because I sort of trying to visualize what would be those few seconds before I die. What would I really want to express? Is love, nothing else. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting because I think that my assertion has been validated. A lot of these NDE talks, right? I don't know if it's choreographed or real, but you can kind of sense their energy when they talk about it. Yeah, most of the authentic ones I gather are just it's universal. It's love.
So with the way your mind works, which is chaotic, with the struggle that you go through, when you're not on a podcast, putting your best foot forward, talking about love, when you're having a bad day, how do you cultivate more love? If that's what you want, if that's what you think it's all about, how do you cultivate more love?
When I'm having a bad day, how do I cultivate love?
Mm-hmm.
I don't go out and intentionally cultivate. I've not yet grasped the importance. I know that's important, right? But I'm not mindful to a point where I need to show love, like how to love yourself. It is such a tough question. I think the question you need to ask is like, do you know yourself? As you know, that one of the interview questions I have, I kind of jokingly share with a lot of the guys that want to work here, and I don't have an HR department. I ask a simple question, and because this is a question that I ask myself first, and I'll because there's no. By the way, this question I'm gonna ask you this. Okay, there's no right and wrong to this question, but the answer lies within how you go about answering the question. Okay, so the question I have, I think, to you and your audience is, do you know how to love yourself?
Not right now. No, no, my mind is incredibly cloudy. My mind and my soul is very restless with everything that's coming up, all the generational stuff. Um, as much as I was, as much as I was told and taught, very powerful techniques for clarity, um, and been around some very high level teachers who were very direct in how they taught. The teachers I had, specifically the one that took care of me, would hate this podcast. He would hate the conversation because it's just noise. Um, and I don't even know why I'm doing this podcast. I don't even know why I understand all the things I do about NDEs and remote viewing and energy healing and psychics and Akashic records because it was all noise. He'd allow me to play with it, but then he would take me immediately off it because he was trying to cultivate clarity. So right now, with everything on this planet happening, there's a lot coming up generationally, and apparently I'm the person that's trying to stop it for my family and families before. Um, I would say no. I don't know how to love myself right now. Don't. It's too much in my
Yet,
head, and I've
what
meditated more than most people have in hundreds of lifetimes. So that's why I'm always interested in what's going on with these practices because people always say if you do this you get this, and it's not the fucking case. It is for some and it's not for others.
you spent the last 3 minutes roughly explaining, answering my simple question, which is, do
Hmm.
you know how to love yourself? Look at that journey that a narrative, that one little marker, all that story right there. That is for you to assess, review, analyze, validate, because that is so revealing.
Hmm.
Just how you gone about explaining that, right? And just let you know, okay, to be fair, I asked that question myself several years ago. And it took me the darnest time. I was shocked that I couldn't answer a question,
Hmm.
right? Really? I don't know the answer to this. And it took me a month. It's like, how? I mean, I struggle with how come I'm unable to answer this question? And, and I was very fortunate, because when what I realized, one day I look at my son, right? I know you will say yes to this question. Do you love your mom and dad? Do you love your grandpa? Of course you do. Without even thinking twice, you say yes. Right? Because I asked my son that question one time when he was 6 years old. I said, Martin, do you know how to love yourself? Yes. A resounding yes without even thinking. He just knew. He didn't have all that layers of bullshit that we start piling on over the years. Because when that's all piled on, you don't know what's underneath anymore. So I finally, after, I want to just say 9 months, it took me a long time to really come full circle and have 100% acceptance to my own response. Is the reason I don't know how to love myself is because I don't know myself. And how you go about learning and knowing yourself, oh, that's a whole different story for a different podcast. I don't know myself. Sure, I got plenty of titles, stuff plugging, packing to my brain. I tons of things in here. I can shoot it out at any given time. But if I don't know what's the energy here, it doesn't really matter. Because if you don't know how to love yourself, and I don't want to sound so heavy in this conversation. I'll use a movie narrative, and I'm going to use Star Wars. Okay, just so you know, I'm not a Star Wars fan. Only watched the first three, right? But I really identify well with Darth Vader, because Darth Vader never knew how to love himself till that moment when he took his mask off and saw his son with his own eyes. That was love. And he was happy. He had a smile. And that smile, right, was a confirmation that there's a true love between father and son. And then he subsequently ascended to the Jedi Council. That was love. So Darth Vader, to the contrary, knew love at the end.
Okay, that was it's a great question that I'll have to think about a little bit more as well.
Yeah, but there's a second question there's a follow-up question to that.
Of course there is. Okay, and
The second question is easy.
mm-hmm.
All right. Second question, everybody I ask, they know it well, myself included. Question is, do you know how to hurt yourself?
That's an easy one.
Number one. Oh, I know how to do that very well. In all possible ways. God damn, so good at that.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate I did not resort to drugs and poisons. I use the word poison because poison is not just, poison comes in different forms. I'll just leave it at that. Let your imagination run wild what poison means to you. And you put that in your body, oh, it'll mess you up because it alters your energy expression big time. And the more you put into it, the more fear energy comes out of you. And I have shit ton of that. And there it goes. There it goes. That goes back to that simple narrative, love and fear.
If it was only that easy. They say it is, but for some of us it's not.
That's why you're here. You had to wait in line, right? Get on the elevator and come here.
Again, that's something I'm having a hard time with because we came from a place of pure love, it sounds like. Why the fuck do we need to learn it here? We already had it. It's no different than people saying you left God to come back to God. Okay.
Okay. No, I think to answer your question, I think it has to do with a full circle. It's a cyclical yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of yang, but not a lot of yin. Dark versus light, love versus fear, right? It's you need the balance. You had a lot of good. Maybe now you're here to experience the opposite of that, to strike a balance, not just on your level, but maybe on a family level,
Mm-hmm.
or on a maybe your genealogy level. There's so many different layers, so many different levels. Like dome after dome. What is that little Russian doll, right?
Yeah, the little nesting doll. Yep, just
Yeah, the
continuously
nesting doll. That's a
unfolds.
very unique metaphor to kind of expand upon your experience. So you're making a judgment, which is painful at this round, but maybe that judgment does not apply when it comes to this round or next. It just expands.
Yeah. Hour 20 in, you just asked some great questions. So now it's my turn for one last question. What is truth to you?
Love. And it's
That's it.
silent. Yep.
Okay.
Love.
Everyone I've asked that to has a very simple answer. Isn't that interesting? When we talk about love or can we hurt ourselves or any other question you and I talked about, we could go on for hours. When someone is asked about truth, even after 2 hours of a podcast, their answer is always short. Always short. So, yeah, just leave it at that.
What did you gather from that?
Truth is very simple. Truth is very, very simple. And
Yet extremely difficult because you got this right here.
well, it's difficult because it is simple. Kind of like when I was with the Pay It Forward Foundation. We had such a simple, but because of the simplicity of it, it was very difficult to get people to do it. You tell them that $5,000 is involved and it's a 10-step program, it takes 3 months, you'd have more people doing it than asking someone to pay it forward and do a kind act to another person. That's how fucked up we are right now when it comes to marketing and what we've been led to believe and how conditioned we've become with the invention of TV and the internet and the ability to get in front of tens, hundreds of millions of people all at once and create a narrative. The more difficult it is, it's credible. The more difficult it is, the easier it is.
Yeah, I
And the
think
more
if there's an opportunity, on a different topic, the discussion is to really talk about different spectrum of love energy.
well, that's
So
where
many
we get off
different
on.
flavors.
That's where we
That's a
get off on the human. Yeah, that's where we get off on the human tangent, and we take something very simple and make it very complicated. So I love your answer. Very simple. Everyone that's ever done answered that question is very. They could be the most talkative human being in the world, but when asked that question, very simple. All right, Robin, that was great, man. I appreciate your time, and we're a minute 20, hour 22 in, so that's perfect. I think that's a good finishing point. Thanks for the questions you asked me. Thanks for answering the questions honestly, like you always do. Ever since I've known you for the past decade, and I loved your
Sure.
answer to truth, and I love that we crossed paths, man.
Yeah, it was meant to be. I'm very honored. I'm very grateful for our friendship over these 10 years. I don't think it's an accident. Not an
No,
accident, Charlie.
no,
Not an accident.
no. All right, man. We're gonna shut it down. I'll see you soon.
Okay. All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks. See you. Bye.
All right. Bye.